Once upon a time, in a land far away, there was a small village called Green Hill. The village was surrounded by soft hills that looked like sleeping giants and golden fields that danced in the wind. In spring, flowers painted the land with bright colors. In winter, snow made the world silent and white. The people of Green Hill were kind, and they worked hard. They grew food in the fields, kept animals in wooden barns, and told stories by the fire when the day was done. Everyone knew each other, and life was simple. But there was one place the people did not go. On the edge of the village, past the last hill, stood a forest. The forest was dark and deep, with trees so tall they seemed to touch the clouds. It was called the Whispering Forest. The people said it was magical. They also said it was dangerous. At night, strange lights could be seen between the trees, and soft voices could be heard, as if the forest was speaking to itself. The villagers believed these were the voices of spirits, or maybe creatures from another world. They warned their children never to go inside. In this village lived a boy named Lucas. Lucas was 12 years old, with brown hair that always seemed messy and eyes full of curiosity. He loved to explore. He climbed the hills, followed streams, and found secret places where he could sit and dream. But the place that made him most curious was the Whispering Forest. Many times, Lucas stood at the forest's edge, staring at the shadows between the trees, wondering what was inside. His grandmother once told him, "The forest has a heart, Lucas, and it only opens to those who are brave." Those words stayed in his mind. One summer morning, Lucas woke up early. The sun was just rising, painting the sky with gold and pink. The air was fresh, and a soft wind carried the smell of pine. Lucas decided to walk to the hills before breakfast. As he walked, he found himself getting closer and closer to the forest. Soon, he was standing right at its edge. He could hear the leaves moving in the wind, but it sounded different today. It sounded like whispers. He listened closely, and he thought he heard his name. Lucas. The sound was so soft he almost thought he imagined it. But then it came again. Lucas? His heart beat faster. Was the forest calling him? He took a step forward. The air felt cooler under the shade of the trees. Sunlight broke through in small beams, lighting spots on the ground. The smell of earth and moss surrounded him. He took another step and another. Soon, the village was gone from sight. All he could see were tall trunks and green leaves above. He heard birds singing high in the branches and somewhere far away, water running over rocks. Lucas walked slowly, trying not to make noise. He wanted to see what was making the whispers. The deeper he went, the stranger the forest felt. The trees seemed older here, with twisted roots and thick bark. The air was full of tiny glowing insects that floated like sparks from a fire. Lucas had never seen them before. He followed a narrow path that curved between the trees. Then he saw something that made him stop. In the middle of a small clearing stood a stone arch. It was covered in vines, and strange symbols were carved into it. The arch was old, but it seemed to hum softly like it was alive. Lucas walked closer. The whispers were louder now, but he still could not understand the words. He reached out and touched the cold stone. Suddenly, the air shimmered, and a light appeared inside the arch, like water glowing in the sun. Lucas stepped back, his eyes wide. The light grew brighter, and he felt a pull as if the arch was inviting him to step through. He looked back the way he had come. The path to the village seemed dark now, and the whispers were all around him. Something inside Lucas told him that this was a moment that could change everything. He took a deep breath, and before he could change his mind, he stepped through. The arch the world around him spun. Colors swirled like paint in water. He felt like he was falling and flying at the same time. Then, with a soft thump, he landed on the ground. When he opened his eyes, he was not in the forest anymore. He was standing in a wide meadow under a sky that looked brighter than any he had seen before. The grass was tall and silver, shining in the sunlight. Flowers with petals like jewels grew all around. In the distance, mountains rose high there, tops covered in snow. Lucas turned in a slow circle, amazed. This place felt alive in a way the real world did not. The air was sweet and warm, and he could hear music, soft and far away, as if the land itself was singing. Then he noticed something moving in the grass. A small creature, no taller than his knee, stepped out and looked at him. It had the body of a rabbit, but its fur was blue and its eyes glowed like stars. It tilted its head, studying him, and then it spoke. "You came," it said in a gentle voice. Lucas could not believe what he heard. "You can talk?" he asked, but the creature only smiled and hopped closer. "We have been waiting for you," it said. "The forest sent you here because you are needed." Lucas did not understand, but he felt no fear. Something about the creature's voice made him trust it. "Follow me," it said, and turned toward the mountains. Lucas followed, his heart beating fast with excitement. They walked through the meadow, past streams that sparkled like liquid silver, and under trees with leaves that rang like tiny bells when the wind touched them. As they walked, Lucas asked questions, but the creature only said, "All will be clear soon." After some time, they reached a hill, and from the top, Lucas saw something that took his breath away. Far below lay a city, but not like any city he had ever seen. The buildings were made of crystal and gold, shining in the sunlight. Bridges of light connected tall towers, and waterfalls poured from the sides of cliffs, filling the air with mist. Flying creatures with wings like glass moved between the towers. The sight was so beautiful Lucas forgot to speak. The creature looked at him. "That is the city of Loria," it said. "It is a place of magic, but it is in danger. Dark clouds are growing beyond the mountains, and soon they will cover the sky. The people of Loria need help, and you are the one who can give it." Lucas was confused. "Me? I'm just a boy." The creature shook its head. "The forest chose you. That means you have something special inside you, something this world needs. You will see." Lucas felt a mix of fear and excitement. He had no idea what was happening, but he wanted to find out. The creature led him down the hill toward the shining city, and Lucas knew that his life had just changed forever. Lucas walked beside the strange blue-furred creature, the silver grass brushing against his legs as they made their way down toward the shimmering city. The closer they came, the more details he could see. The crystal towers reflected the sunlight in thousands of colors, and the waterfalls spilled into rivers that glowed faintly as if lit from within. Bridges of pure light arched over the rivers, and tiny boats floated beneath them, carrying people dressed in long flowing clothes that shimmered like moonlight. He could hear laughter, music, and the gentle hum of magic in the air. As they reached the edge of the city, Lucas noticed that no gates or walls blocked the way. It was as if the city welcomed anyone who came with a pure heart. The creature hopped ahead, turning its glowing eyes back toward him. "Stay close to me," it said. "Loria is beautiful, but beauty does not mean safety. There are things here that do not wish for the city to survive." Lucas swallowed but nodded. The streets were paved with smooth, glowing stones that felt warm under his feet. Flowers bloomed in every corner, and fountains shaped like animals poured streams of sparkling water. People moved about slowly, smiling at one another, yet when their eyes landed on Lucas, they paused. Some whispered to each other, and a few even bowed their heads slightly. Lucas felt shy. "Why are they looking at me?" he whispered. The creature answered without turning, "Because they know the forest has sent you. They know your journey is important." They came to a wide open square with a fountain in the middle. At the far end, a large building stood, its walls made of white stone with golden vines carved into them. Tall doors stood open, and two guards in silver armor held long spears that glimmered in the sunlight. "This is the Hall of Elders," the creature explained. "They are the leaders of Loria. They will tell you what must be done." Lucas took a deep breath as they stepped inside. The hall was vast and filled with soft light that seemed to come from nowhere and everywhere at once. At the far end sat 5 figures in hubbaked chairs. They wore robes in colors of deep green, bright blue, rich gold, soft white, and fiery red. Each of them had eyes that seemed to see straight into Lucas's thoughts. The creature bowed deeply, and Lucas quickly copied it. The elder in the golden robe spoke first. "So the forest has chosen. Welcome, Lucas of Green Hill." Lucas stepped forward nervously. "I don't know why I'm here," he admitted. The elder in green smiled kindly. "You are here because our world is in danger. Beyond the mountains lies the Shadow Vale, a place where darkness has grown for many years. Now, the darkness is spreading, reaching toward our city. It seeks to cover the sky and steal the light from the land. Our magic alone is not enough to stop it." Lucas listened, his heart pounding. "But what can I do? I don't have magic. I'm just a boy." The elder in white leaned forward. "The forest chooses not by power, but by heart. You have something that cannot be taught: courage, curiosity, kindness. These are the strongest magic of all. You will find the rest along the way." The elder in red spoke next, her voice strong and warm. "You must go to the Crystal Mountain. There, hidden deep inside, is the heart. It is the only thing that can push back the darkness, but it is guarded by challenges that test more than strength. You will need friends, wisdom, and bravery to succeed." Lucas felt the weight of their words. He wanted to say no, to run back to his safe village, but deep inside, he knew he couldn't. Something told him this was his path now. He nodded slowly. I'll do it. I'll go to the Crystal Mountain." The elders seemed pleased. The golden-robed one raised his hand, and from the air itself a small object appeared, floating toward Lucas. It was a pendant shaped like a tiny silver leaf with a blue gem in its center. "This will guide you," the elder said. "It will glow when you are on the right path and darken when danger is near. Protect it well." Lucas took the pendant and placed it around his neck. It felt warm, like it was alive. The creature beside him, who had been quiet until now, spoke. "I will go with him. He will need a guide." The elders nodded, and the one in green said, "Then may the light of Loria protect you both." They left the hall, and the city seemed brighter somehow, as if it knew a journey had begun. The creature looked up at Lucas. "By the way, I never told you my name. I am Fenwick." Lucas smiled. "Nice to meet you, Fenwick." The little blue rabbit-like guide hopped ahead, leading him through the winding streets toward the far side of the city. They passed through markets filled with strange fruits that floated in the air, fabrics that shimmered with moving patterns, and bottles that held tiny glowing storms inside. The smells of sweet bread, spiced drinks, and fresh flowers surrounded them. Lucas wished he could stay and explore, but Fenwick reminded him, "The darkness will not wait for us." Soon they reached the city's edge, where a stone road stretched toward the mountains. Beyond them, Lucas could see dark clouds gathering, swirling in a slow, menacing dance. The pendant around his neck pulsed softly, as if it could feel the danger ahead. They began to walk, leaving the shining city behind. The road led them through fields and forests, past rivers and strange rock formations. Sometimes Lucas saw animals unlike any from his world: deer with silver antlers, birds with crystal feathers, and fish that swam through the air like water. Each sight filled him with wonder, but also reminded him how different and unpredictable this land was. One afternoon, as they crossed a small wooden bridge over a clear stream, Fenwick suddenly stopped. His ears twitched and his eyes narrowed. "We are not alone," he whispered. Lucas looked around, but saw nothing. Then, from the shadows beneath the trees, shapes began to move. Figures stepped out, tall, cloaked, and wearing masks shaped like snarling wolves. They surrounded the bridge silently. Fenwick's voice was low. "Shadowlings, servants of the darkness. They must have followed our scent." One of the masked figures spoke, its voice like dry leaves in the wind. "The boy comes with us." Lucas felt his heart race. He took a step back, but there was nowhere to go. Fenwick leaped forward, standing between Lucas and the shadowlings. "You'll have to go through me," he said fiercely. The shadowlings began to close in, and Lucas's pendant glowed brightly, sending a beam of blue light across the bridge. The shadowlings hissed and shielded their eyes. "Run," Fenwick shouted, and Lucas obeyed. They dashed across the bridge and into the forest beyond. The shadows followed, but the pendant's light seemed to slow them. After what felt like forever, they burst out into a clearing, gasping for breath. Fenwick looked at him seriously. "This was just the first test. The darkness knows you are here now." From this moment on, it will try everything to stop you." Lucas nodded, still breathing hard. "Then we have to move faster." They set off again, this time moving quickly toward the mountains. In the distance, Lucas could see their white peaks shining, but he knew that between here and there, many more challenges awaited. The adventure had only just begun. Asterisk, asterisk, Lucas and Fenwick pressed on, the silver leaf pendant glowing faintly as they followed a narrow path that wound between hills. The air grew cooler the closer they came to the mountain, and the gentle grasslands slowly gave way to rocky slopes covered in patches of moss and stubborn wildflowers. The sky above was still bright, but far ahead, those heavy dark clouds swirled like a slow-moving storm, a reminder of what they were racing against. Lucas could feel a tension in the air now, as if the land itself knew something was coming. They passed under the twisted arch of an ancient tree, its branches so wide they formed a natural tunnel. The sunlight dimmed here, and the sound of the wind grew faint, replaced by a low, steady hum. "What is that sound?" Lucas whispered. Fenwick's ears twitched. "It's the song group," he said. "Old magic grows here. The roots of this tree reach across the whole valley, carrying the memory of the land. It hums when it senses a traveler on a true quest." Lucas reached out to touch the rough bark, and for a moment, images flashed in his mind, rivers flowing, flowers blooming, strange creatures roaming under bright moons, and finally, a glimpse of the Cristo Mountain shining far away. When he pulled his hand back, his heart was beating faster. "It showed me where we're going," he murmured. Fenwick gave a small smile. "Then it approves of you." They emerged from the tree's shadow and began climbing a steep hill. At the top, Lucas gasped. Before them stretched a vast valley, green and gold, dotted with small lakes that reflected the sky. Far beyond the valley's edge, the mountains rose like giant guardians, their snow-capped peaks glowing in the sunlight. But between the valley and the mountains was something strange, a band of dark mist curling low over the ground, as if a shadow had spilled across the land. Fenwick frowned. "The mist border," he said quietly. "Beyond that lies the lands touched by the darkness. The air there is colder, and the light does not fall the same way. We will need help to cross." They made their way down into the valley, heading toward a cluster of small stone houses near one of the lakes. As they approached, Lucas saw people working in the fields, tall, thin folk with silver hair and skin that seemed to glow faintly in the sunlight. They wore simple clothes, but each carried a small charm of crystal around their necks. When the villagers noticed Lucas and Fenwick, they paused their work and gathered slowly, their eyes curious but cautious. An elder stepped forward, leaning on a carved staff. Her hair was long and white, and her eyes were the pale blue of a winter sky. "You come from Loria," she said, her voice calm but firm. Fenwick bowed slightly. "Yes, this is Lucas, chosen by the forest. He must reach the Crystal Mountain." "Ah." Quiet murmur passed through the villagers. The eldest studied Lucas for a long moment before speaking again. "The mist border grows thicker each day. It steals the strength of those who enter it unprepared. If you wish to pass, you will need the blessing of the lake spirit." Lucas glanced toward the wide lake nearby. Its surface was still like sheets of polished glass. "How do I get the blessing?" he asked. The elder's gaze softened, though her tone was serious. "You must go to the center of the lake, where the waters are deepest. There you will find a stone shaped like a crescent moon. Place your pendant upon it and speak your name. If the spirit accepts you, the mist will not harm you. But beware, the lake tests those who come to it. Only truth will open its heart." Lucas Doha felt a shiver of nervousness, but he nodded. The elder gave him a small wooden boat, and soon he and Fenwick were gliding across the still water. The deeper they went, the quieter the world became, until even the wind seemed to vanish. The lake was so clear Lucas could see schools of fish darting below, their scales flashing like tiny mirrors. At last, they reached a small circle of stone rising just above the surface. In the middle was the crescent-shaped rock, smooth and pale. Lucas stepped carefully onto it, kneeling to take the silver leaf pendant from his neck. He placed it gently on the stone, then closed his eyes and said, "I am Lucas of Green Hill." For a moment, nothing happened. Then the water around the stone began to ripple, though no wind touched it. A soft light rose from the depths, and a voice, gentle and deep, spoke within Lucas's mind. "Why do you seek to cross into the shadowed lands?" Lucas hesitated, then spoke from his heart. "Because the darkness is spreading. It will take everything if no one stops it. I can't let that happen. Even if I'm just one person, I want to try." The voice was silent for a moment, then replied, "Your words are true. But truth alone is not enough. You must give something of yourself to the lake so it knows your courage." Lucas thought quickly, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a small carved bird. It was something his grandmother had given him, a piece of home he had carried since he left the village. It meant a lot to him, but he knew what he had to do. He placed it beside the pendant on the stone. The light from below grew brighter, and suddenly the water rose up around him in the shape of a great shimmering figure. It had the form of a woman, but its hair was made of flowing water, and its eyes were the deep blue of the lake. "You have given your truth and your heart," she said. "The mist will not harm you. Go, and remember, the path ahead is never as it seems." The light faded, and the figure melted back into the water. Lucas picked up his pendant, now warm and glowing brighter than before. He and Fenwick rowed back to shore, where the elder was waiting. "The spirit has accepted you," she said with a small smile. "May the wind guide your steps." They set off again, walking toward the line of dark mist at the far end of the valley. The air grew colder as they approached, and the colors of the land seemed duller. But when Lucas stepped into the mist, the pendant glowed brightly, and the chill faded. They moved through the shifting fog until, at last, they stepped out on the other side. Here, the land was different. The grass was darker, the trees twisted as if they had grown in pain. The sky was pale and clouded, and the air carried a faint, bitter smell. In the distance, strange shapes moved, too far to see clearly, but enough to keep Lucas on edge. They walked for hours until they came to a ruined bridge spanning a deep, rushing river. The bridge's middle had collapsed, leaving only broken stone on either side. Fenwick frowned. We can't turn back. There must be another way. Lucas studied the river, then noticed something glinting among the rocks below, a narrow path winding down to the water's edge. Maybe we can cross there, he suggested. They climbed down carefully, the rocks slippery under their feet. At the bottom, they found a line of large stepping stones leading across the river. As Lucas stepped onto the first stone, the water surged higher, splashing against his legs. We need to move quickly, Fenwick urged. They jumped from stone to stone, the roar of the river growing louder. Halfway across, a shadow passed under the water, moving fast. Lucas froze. What was that? Before Fenwick could answer, the water exploded upward and a massive serpent burst from the river. Its scales were black as night, and its eyes burned with a cold blue light. It hissed, revealing fangs as long as Lucas's arm. The pendant flared brightly, and Lucas felt a sudden warmth in his chest. He remembered the lake spirit's words. The path ahead is never as it seems. Looking closely, he noticed the serpent wasn't attacking. It was blocking their way, but its body trembled as if in pain. Something's wrong with it, Lucas said. He stepped forward slowly, ignoring Fenwick's warning. We're not here to hurt you, he told the serpent. It hissed again, but its movements grew weaker. Lucas saw a jagged shard of black crystal lodged in its neck. Without thinking, he leapt onto the nearest stone beside it and reached out. The serpent thrashed, but he held on, pulling the shard free. The moment it was gone, the serpent let out a deep, rumbling sigh, and its eyes softened to a clear green. It lowered its head, letting Lucas and Fenwick climb onto its back. Then, with a single, smooth movement, it carried them across the river and set them gently on the far shore. Lucas patted its scales. Thank you, he whispered. The serpent dipped its head in a nod before slipping back into the water and disappearing. Fenwick looked at Lucas with a mix of awe and disbelief. You really are different, he said quietly. Lucas just smiled. Come on, the mountains aren't going to walk to us. Asterisk, asterisk, they continued toward the rising peaks. The path ahead dark but full of possibility. Somewhere beyond those snowy slopes waited the Crystal Mountain, and whatever trials it held. The morning after the battle dawned heavy with mist, the kind that clung to your skin and made the forest seem older, stranger, as if it had been holding its breath for centuries and was only now exhaling. The ground was damp beneath our boots, and each step felt like it was sinking into the memories of the earth. The air carried the faint smell of smoke from campfires long gone cold. And somewhere far away, a bird called out, its voice echoing through the tangled branches like a reminder that life still pulsed beyond the shadows. I could feel the weight of the journey pressing down on us, yet it was not an unwelcome burden. It was the weight of purpose. The stone I carried in my satchel seemed warmer than usual, as though it sensed we were drawing closer to the place it had been waiting for all along. The others felt it too. Their eyes kept drifting to me, not in doubt, but in silent acknowledgement that whatever lay ahead would change us in ways we couldn't yet name. We followed the river for hours, its current rushing with a restless urgency that matched our own. The banks were lined with moss-covered stones, and every so often we passed ancient carvings etched into them symbols no one in our group could read, though I had the unnerving sense they were watching us. By midday, the mist began to thin, and a pale golden light filtered through the trees, revealing the jagged silhouette of mountains in the distance. That was where the map had led us from the beginning. That was where the heart of the prophecy whispered in dreams was said to beat. The climb would be brutal. I could feel it in my bones, but there was no other way forward. Every path had led here, to this narrowing of choices, this quiet tightening of fate around our throats. The first sign that the mountains were not empty came when the wind shifted and carried with it the low, almost imperceptible hum. A voice, human voices, but deeper, layered, as though the stone peaks themselves were murmuring secrets to one another. We froze. Even the river seemed to hush in that moment. Then, faint but clear, a single tone rose above the rest, pure and steady, like the striking of a crystal bell. My heart stumbled in my chest. It was a call not meant for us, but for something older and far more dangerous that lived beyond the veil of the visible world. Without speaking, we pressed on the path, now twisting upward, roots clawing at our ankles, the air thinning with each step. Night caught us halfway up the mountainside, and we made camp in the shelter of a narrow cliffside overhang. The stars were strange here, brighter, sharper, and arranged in patterns I didn't recognize. One constellation in particular seemed to burn brighter whenever I looked at it, a shape that mirrored the carving on the stone I carried. Sleep came fitfully, broken by dreams that weren't my own. Flashes of a vast chamber of ice and fire, a throne carved from living rock, and a shadowed figure whose eyes gleamed like molten gold. When I woke, my hands were trembling, and I could feel a pulse in the air as steady as a heartbeat. The mountain was alive. The higher we climbed, the more the world below faded into memory. Trees gave way to bare rock. The wind grew sharp enough to bite, and clouds gathered thick and fast, swallowing the sun. By the time we reached the pass, snow was falling in slow, deliberate flakes, as though the sky itself was measuring each breath we took. There, at the very crest, stood the gate. It was not built by human hands. No meso could have shaped such perfect arcs of obsidian and crystal, each shimmering faintly with its own light. The gate did not open onto more mountain, but into a darkness so deep it seemed to pull the air toward it. The stone in my satchel throbbed, and before I could stop myself, I stepped forward. The air beyond the gate was warmer, thick with the scent of earth and lightning. My vision swam as the world shifted around me, and when it cleared, I found myself standing in a vast cavern, its ceiling lost in shadows, its walls lined with rivers of molten gold that flowed without heat. The others appeared beside me, equally stunned. A voice spoke then, not in sound, but in thought, threading through the very core of my mind. You have come at last. It was neither male nor female, but something beyond those limits, ancient and vast. From the darkness ahead, a figure emerged, its form shifting like smoke, its eyes the same molten gold I had seen in my dream. It regarded us for a long, unbroken moment, then smiled not kindly, but knowingly. The choice you make here will unmake the world you knew. I felt the weight of every step, every hardship, every loss that had led us to this point pressing down on me. And yet, beneath it all, there was the steady, undeniable beat of hope. The night was deep, and the moon's silver light spilled across the valley like a quiet blessing. Our campfire had burned down to glowing embers, sending thin streams of smoke twisting toward the stars. The air was crisp, and the world felt both dangerous and strangely peaceful, as if the land itself was holding its breath before what was to come. We had been traveling for many weeks now, chasing a trail of whispers, rumors, and fragments of forgotten maps, each clue drawing us deeper into lands that most dared not enter. I could feel the weight of the journey pressing down on us, not just in our aching feet or tired eyes, but in the way our thoughts had grown sharper, more aware, as if the road itself was teaching us how to survive. Even the smallest sounds in the dark caught our attention now. The soft rustle of leaves, the faint cry of some distant bird, the crack of a branch far off in the woods. Ahead lay the shattered spire, a place we had heard about since the first day we began this quest. They said it was the remnant of a tower that once touched the sky, its stones carved from magic itself, its walls alive with power. Now, only broken pillars and jagged shards remained, jutting into the air like the bones of some ancient giant. But even in ruin, it was said to hold a secret something that could shift the balance of the world. As I sat by the dying fire, I traced the edges of the old parchment map we carried, the one that had guided us this far. Its ink was fading, but the lines still glowed faintly when held to the firelight, as if the map itself remembered the path better than we did. We rose at first light, the pale sun spilling over the hills and painting the grass in gold. The air was colder here, the wind sharper, and with every step the ground grew rockier. By midday, the shattered spire came into view, a silhouette of stone and shadow against the horizon. My heart quickened. It looked larger than I had imagined, and there was a strange beauty in its brokenness, like a painting that had been torn in half but still told its story. The closer we came, the more I could feel it. A hum in the air, low and steady, not a sound, but a vibration in my bones. Magic still lingered here. We stepped through the archway of what must have once been the tower's gate, though now it was only 2 leaning columns, cracked and covered in ivy. Inside, the ground was uneven, scattered with fragments of crystal that caught the sunlight and sent it dancing across the walls. I reached down and picked one up. It was warm in my hand, almost alive. That was when I noticed the carvings. Faint lines ran along the fallen stones, symbols too old to belong to any kingdom we knew. I brushed the dust away and felt the shape of each mark. They weren't just decorations, they were words, a story in a language long forgotten. Before we could study them further, a shadow moved across the ground. We looked up and saw a shape circling high above wings, wide, glinting with something metallic in the light. It was not a bird, nor any creature I had seen before. It was watching us. Slowly, it began to descend, its movements smooth and deliberate, and I felt the same deep hum in my bones grow stronger. When it landed, the earth trembled slightly beneath its weight. Its body was like a mix of flesh and stone, its scales flecked with gold, its eyes like molten amber. It did not speak, but I understood somehow that it was guarding this place. We stood still, neither moving forward nor back, as it lowered its head slightly, as if testing our resolve. Then, without a word, It turned and walked toward a dark passage at the base of the spire. It paused, looked back at us once, and vanished into the shadows. I knew then that we were meant to follow. Inside, the air was thick and cool, carrying the scent of damp stone and old magic. The walls glimmered faintly with veins of crystal, and our footsteps echoed in the hollow space. As we went deeper, the hum grew louder, and soon it felt as if my heartbeat was matching its rhythm. Then the tunnel opened into a vast chamber, so large that the ceiling vanished into darkness. At its center stood something I could barely comprehend. Pillar of light, rising from the floor to the unseen heights above, shifting in colors like sunlight through water. The creature stood beside it, silent and still, its gaze fixed on us. I stepped forward, the light spilling over me, warm and strangely weightless. In that moment, I saw flashes of places I had never been, faces I had never met, and yet somehow I felt they were all connected to me. A voice, not the creature's, but something older spoke inside my mind. It told me that this was the heart of the spire, a fragment of the first magic that had shaped the world. It could heal, it could destroy, and it could awaken what had long been sleeping. But it could not be taken. It could only be understood. I do not know how long I stood there, listening to the voice and feeling the weight of what it said. When I finally stepped back, the light dimmed slightly, and the creature bowed its head. Without a sound, it turned away and vanished into the shadows again. I knew we would not see it again, and I knew our journey was not over. The spire had given us something: knowledge, purpose, and perhaps a warning. We left as the sun began to set, its light catching on the broken stones and making them glow like embers. The road ahead would lead us into deeper lands, places where the maps turned blank and the stories grew darker. But we no longer walked as seekers, we walked as those who had been chosen, and somewhere in the back of my mind, I could still hear the hum of the spire, guiding us forward, step by step, into whatever waited beyond the horizon. The mountains behind them were now no more than a jagged shadow, their snowy crowns fading in the distance as the travelers pressed onward into a land of endless golden plains. The air was warmer here, filled with the hum of unseen insects and the smell of wildflowers. Yet even in this beauty, there was an edge of unease and awareness that they were closer than ever to the end, and that the end might demand more than any of them were willing to give. Aaron walked at the front, the staff in his hand feeling heavier with each step. It was no longer the simple wooden rod he had first carried from his village. It pulsed faintly with golden light now, alive in a way that made him wonder if it was carrying him rather than the other way around. Mira kept to his right, her bow slung but her eyes sharp, scanning the horizon as if expecting trouble at any moment. Kalen, whose healing magic had been their saving grace more times than they could count, walked silently to the left, his mind clearly somewhere far away. And behind them, Thoros, the wolf, padded silently, his fur shimmering faintly in the late sun. They had been through too much to speak of fear anymore, but they all felt it, that by the third day on the plains, they saw it, rising from the horizon. Like a jagged claw was the citadel of dusk, the final barrier between them and the shard of eternity. Its black stone walls twisted upward in unnatural angles. Spires stabbing into the sky as if they were trying to wound the heavens themselves. Above it, the sky churned thick clouds, deep violet and crimson, swirled in a constant spiral. Lightning flickered soundlessly within them, as if the storm were alive and watching. They reached the outer gates by nightfall. No guards stood there, but the gates themselves were formed of iron so black it seemed to swallow the torchlight. When Aaron touched it, the metal was colder than ice, and the air around it smelled faintly of burned air. They all knew this was no ordinary place. "We go in together," Aaron said simply. The gates swung open on their own. Inside was silence. Not the silence of peace, but the suffocating stillness of a place where nothing dared to breathe. The halls were vast, lined with statues of warriors, their eyes hollow and their armor twisted into grotesque shapes. Mira's bow was in her hand before she realized it. Kellen's light magic glowed faintly, painting the black stone walls in a thin gold sheen. They passed through corridor after corridor, the silence broken only by the echo of their own footsteps until it wasn't. A sound rose from the darkness ahead, soft at first, then growing. It was laughter, low, cruel, and layered, as if more than one voice spoke at once. The throne room doors loomed ahead, enormous and carved with images of serpents devouring suns. They opened without a touch, and inside sat the figure they had come so far to face, the Shadow King. He was not man, not entirely. His body was tall and draped in black robes that seemed woven from night itself. But where his face should have been was only a swirling void, 2 points of crimson light burning like eyes deep within it. The air around him bent and warped, and when he spoke, it was like hearing a dozen voices at once. "You have walked far, little flame," the Shadow King said, his gaze fixed on Aaron. "But the shard is not yours to take. It belongs to the darkness from which all light is born." Aaron felt the staff tremble in his grip, the golden light at its tip brightening as if in defiance. "We didn't come this far to turn back," he said, his voice steady despite the way the shadows seemed to press against his chest. "We came to end this." The battle began in a heartbeat. Darkness poured from the Shadow King's form, filling the room like a living tide. Aaron thrust the staff forward, its light burning through the shadows, while Mira's arrows cut through the air like streaks of silver fire. Kellen's magic surged, forming a shield of pure light around them, deflecting bolts of darkness that shattered the stone where they struck. But the Shadow King was vast, his form shifting and stretching as if made of smoke. Each strike they landed seemed to vanish into the void that was his body. Aaron felt the weight of despair creeping into his thoughts until Thoros leaped forward, his entire body wreathed in pale fire. The wolf struck the Shadow King's chest, and for the first time, the darkness recoiled. Now, KalenShadow.arin raised the staff high, the golden light blinding in its brilliance. He thought not of himself, but of the people who would never know his name but would live in a world free from this shadow. He drove the staff downward, its tip striking the ground with a sound like shattering glass. Light erupted pure, endless, and fierce. It burned away the shadows, flooding the citadel until every corner was washed in gold. The Shadow King's scream was like the tearing of the sky itself. And then silence. When the light faded, the throne was empty. The shard of eternity lay where the Shadow King had sat, its crystalline surface reflecting every color of the world at once. Aaron reached for it, and for a moment he saw vision. People laughing under a clear sky. Peace. They left the citadel together, the shard safe in Aaron's pack, the sun rising over the plains. The storm was gone, the sky blue. Once more, none of them spoke for a long while, but they all knew the same truth. The journey was over, but its mark would never fade. That as the wind whispered across the grass, Aaron smiled faintly. The world was wide, and there would always be more to see, more to protect. But for now, they had earned their rest.